How's your product team doing? What metrics would you use to really find out? Is team culture on your list? In this discussion, we're exploring why culture isn't just a nice to have, but a strong predictor of long-term product success. We'll explore how to build resilience that survives market shifts and improve product success by improving team success. Our guest is product leader Namrta Raghvendra. She has spent over 15 years of building technology products that have helped connect communities in different ways. Previously at Meta, she built digital advertising products to connect billions of users with their favorite businesses. Prior to that, she helped launch AI-powered chatbots at Salesforce to help businesses connect with their customers seamlessly. And she's also held product roles at LinkedIn and at Dell. And if you're listening to us and would rather watch the video version, simply go to YouTube and search on Product Mastery Now and you'll find us. We'll jump in right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Namrta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I always enjoy having a conversation about culture because I do think it's a very secret weapon that we can bring to organizations and bring to product teams. I'm delighted to have this conversation. We talked a little bit earlier that your friends call you Nam.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so
Feel free to call me Nam.
Okay, I'll use Nam then during our discussion here.
Perfect.
Let's just get a little background on your experiences in product. And I'm most curious about what have you enjoyed about those roles in doing product work?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I am so excited to talk about culture because it's a topic that's very, very close to my heart. And like you mentioned, I've been working in the tech industry for almost 15 years now. And I actually started my career with product marketing and moved to product strategy and then eventually to product management. The reason I moved to product management was because I really wanted to be close to the product decision making.
Mm-hmm.
What are we building? Who are we building for? And why are we building it? And I think that's the part that I've enjoyed the most, like being able to decide that and actually impact and solve for the core user problems.
Mm.
And I think I feel very privileged that I've worked at companies like LinkedIn, Salesforce, and Meta, where I have been able to solve these user problems and deliver impact. So at LinkedIn, I was part of the team that grew or scaled Recruiter, LinkedIn Recruiter, which is LinkedIn's flagship product from 600 million to 3 billion in revenue over 3 years. And at Salesforce, like you mentioned, I launched the first AI-powered chatbot for the company, which was the highest performing AI product in the company's portfolio back then. And during my 6 years at Meta, I worked in ads within the Facebook org.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the privilege and a pretty major hand in launching ads in most of the major surfaces within the Facebook app, like ads in stories, ads in reels, ads in marketplace and search. So yeah, so I think those are a couple of the highlights from my work, my product career.
Yeah, fantastic. And it sounds like a big theme. I like to position the what, the who, the why kind of around the product is being able to have that opportunity to create something that is of value to a customer. I've trained lots of product managers along the way, right? And now continue to do that and also teach at university product management type classes. And I find most people that want to move into this role or are in this role, it's usually because of that ability to create something new that creates value for customers. And they also like to have a kind of a bigger view of the organization, right? They kind of a bigger influence in being able to bring something new to the organization as well.
Absolutely.
That's exciting for us product people to do that. I want to ask you about time at Meta. They're held up their culture originally, kind of that startup culture, the phrase that they have used and it gets thrown around a lot now, move fast and break things. So it was this notion of we have a lot to learn. let's figure out what works and what doesn't, do that as quickly as we can. And obviously, we're going to make mistakes along the way and break things, right? Kind of a entrepreneur, innovator mindset. But that certainly shifted as the organization scaled to probably more of a responsibility focus in there, right? We can't just be breaking things. We have to make things work and keep things working too. How did the culture kind of shift, especially towards the product side of things when that was going on, right? Because I think that's two very different cultures to experience. And that shift probably happened rather rapidly from that really startup sort of mentality to now we're a big company.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I was part of that transition myself. So I would say before the emphasis on responsibility, the move fast, break things was interpreted by the product and engineering teams as let's ship quickly and
Mm,
we can keep iterating on the product after it's been shipped, which is also something that we do now. But I think the emphasis on responsibility really focused on foreseeing any avoidable harm and preventing it early on. So the way it impacted the product teams was twofold. The first was that the product teams became very rigorous about guardrails and countermetrics. So it wasn't just enough to grow revenue, but yes, we grew revenue. What was the impact on user trust? And the second piece was that the PMs, the product managers, started working very closely with the policy and legal teams. And this is like before we would ship an experiment or launch a product. So obviously, it created a lot of upfront work for the product
mm,
teams where now you had this extra step to navigate before you could ship. And change is hard. Any change is hard. This was a big change for the company in the mindset and the way we ship things internally. So there was a lot of resistance. And I would say like you spoke about the shift happening fast. And yes, like the shift was rolled out fast, but then people adapted to it. Like people adapting to it took some time.
sure.
So, just like how Meta launches products and then iterates on it, Meta launched this product and and iterated on this process for almost a year. It got it to a point where it was not seen as a blocker, but an enabler for the teams.
Mm,
So, I think some key elements of how Meta iterated on the process were one, there was a lot of communication around yes, there is this upfront step, which is adding more work for the teams upfront and delaying the shipping timelines, but this is making the system less fragile. So it's a healthier system. And the if we launched a product that created reputational damage for the company or resulted in rolling back a product, that's actually going to slow the teams even more.
yeah.
So let's make sure that we are going through the legal and policy reviews and doing a thorough risk review and thinking about the countermetrics that we have to keep in mind to like measure success of the product. And I think Meta also did a really good job of kind of like making sure that going back to my earlier point of like the process enabling the teams and not blocking the teams, the way the process worked was that the legal and policy teams actually started syncing with each and every product team in their org during road mapping and
Mm,
flagging the high risk projects during the road mapping process. So it gave the product teams an opportunity to reprioritize if they needed to. And this is where they would flag things like any issues with handling the user data the way they wanted to, or launching an experience, building an experience on top of user data which would not be approved from a privacy or integrity perspective.
mhm.
So identifying the high risk projects early, giving the teams a chance to reprioritize, and for the low risk projects, having a very low touch process where you could like just like fill out a form and describe what you're building, what is the user data it uses, how you're handling the user data, what does the final experience look like, and then almost getting an instant approval. So, still moving things relatively fast for most of the low risk projects, and also having an escalation path for the high priority, high visibility, urgent projects. So, in all of this didn't happen overnight. This like
Right.
took Meta almost a year to get to.
Yeah, good. So we're adding, like any organization scales, we're adding some appropriate process to help things along the way. This was really to reduce risk of causing reputational harm and not doing something that customers might be outraged about, right? And so you said that this became kind of an enabler. It sounded like maybe the product teams recognized that we're actually building more valuable products, in a sense, better products through this experience. I'm sure there's some that really missed the kind of that startup flow and had a hard time adjusting to this, and maybe some of them decided not to go on that journey. But after the year, it sounded like people saw the transition and recognized why this was valuable and were on board. Is that
Yes,
true?
yeah, yeah. So people didn't really have the choice to say that they didn't want to go through the process. The process
Oh,
was
sure.
there.
Yeah, I meant like they probably left
Y-
Facebook
Oh, I
and
see. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then those who really believed in what we were building and understood that now we were building products that were, again, you use the word value. And value is such a loaded term, because how do you measure value? Is it just revenue? Is it user trust? Is it user engagement? So what are you optimizing for? I think this is where understanding the nuance that, yes, like on the ads team specifically, where I worked, revenue was the North Star metric, and that was our goal. But at the same time, we cannot increase revenue at the cost of losing user trust. So
Right.
shifting that mindset was key. And it did take time to adapt, like for the people to adapt and understand that understand that mindset and really go through that shift, and for the company to also make sure that the process was like not slowing people down and enabling as much as it can. So like I said, having an escalation path or helping the teams identify risks earlier, because of which the projects could later be blocked, like things like those were very
Hmm.
critical,
Good. Yeah.
which everyone appreciated.
Yeah, that's good, right? We're building more responsible products. And as organizations scale, there's cultural changes that occur, and we tend to have to put in more process. And in this case, wanting to build professional products that weren't going to in any way kind of harm the user's experience, our reputation. I want to dig into the cultural elements in maybe a more general way. There's that famous article that a lot of people have heard of, that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Hmm.
And then there was a follow-up, I forget who wrote that one, that the culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you've talked about culture being a predictor of longer-term success. Tell us how you think about the real impact that culture has.
Yeah. So, like I said, culture is a topic that's very close to my heart. And I do think that a good strategy is only as successful as the execution. And execution largely depends on the culture of the company. So there's a strong correlation between how a team executes and what the culture is, right? So the culture is like the operating system of a team, and the it's essentially how people make decisions. So do the people challenge each other's assumptions? Do they ask the hard questions? And once the team makes a decision, then does everyone commit and executes on it? And what happens when things go wrong? Right?
Mhm.
So the do people get political? Do they start blaming, or do they still stay aligned and are resilient? And so I think, and do they learn from that failure? So I think these are all parts of the culture, and culture can really make or break the strategy. And over time, culture compounds. So I think, what my personal belief and what I've seen is that a strong culture results in shipping faster, higher trust amongst the team, learning fast, and it also helps attract greater talent. So it kind
Mhm.
of becomes like a virtuous cycle and has that flywheel impact that we talk about in the product.
Let's talk about attracting the greater talent, right?
Hmm.
I have experienced one organization that really did have a survival of the fittest kind of culture, and it worked for them, right? And they were able to attract a certain kind of talent, which was high performers, but people that excelled in that environment, and in my opinion, might be people that are okay rubbing others the wrong way on a regular basis, right? And other cultures that I would characterize, like when I've asked them, "How do you think about your culture?" A recurring phrase comes up is like, "Yeah, we got each other's back." right? We're going to be successful together. We got each other's back. Sure, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to figure this out, right? Talk a little bit about how you think about culture in terms of attracting the right people, good talent for the team.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to attracting the right talent for that company or that team. But I do think that the culture that you're describing will compromise on a lot of facets that are important for companies, like risk taking.
Oh, that
Because
one, that's survival, the fitness type culture.
yeah, the survival
Yeah.
of the fittest type culture.
No.
Because if you are looking at a very standard set of things that help you survive, then people are going to they will stop taking risks. They will
Right.
start doing what they know for sure would work. And they will start optimizing for how they are measured instead of taking risks. So I think which then will compromise the innovation. You can't be an innovative company until people are taking risks. And if you want people to take risks, then you actually want to create a psychological safety for the company, for the people. And psychological safety implies that it's okay to fail as long
Mm-hmm.
as you're learning from that failure and you make sure that you or your team does not repeat that again.
Yep. So let me ask you about being in a team and kind of team culture, about how do we kind of measure what that culture looks like? Is it the culture that we want? Are we going in the right direction that we want? What do you think about metrics that we might use to kind of track the evolution or the growth of the culture and maybe recognize things that we don't like that we want to correct?
So this is a hard one because culture is hard to measure. But I do think that there are some leading indicators that the leaders can look at and for like measuring the culture, like how strong the culture is. So some of the metrics that I look at are the quality of disagreement, right? So we were just talking about people disagreeing with each other. Can people actually challenge each other's ideas without challenging the credentials or the credibility of the other person? And going back to psychological safety, psychological safety implies that there is radical candor along with radical care. Accountability is another one. Do most people in a team deliver what they commit to or what's expected of them in time? And if they're missing the deadlines, then do they understand why they're missing the deadlines and make sure that it doesn't happen again?
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that I really look for is the learning rate. So the time that it takes a team or people to go from a question to an insight. And there are steps that need to happen in the middle, like a question's posed, and then you come up with a hypothesis, you run an experiment, and you get to the insight. So how much does that take? Does how much time does it take? And what are we learning? Are the learnings documented, shared, socialized, and reused? And the last one that I would add is how often are people saying, I don't know, but I'll find out later?
Mm.
Because that signals humility, and humility is something that's strongly correlated with high performance teams.
That's good, right? The humility aspect too, that, and also willingness to find the answer, but we don't have to make something up in the moment just because we're asked.
Yeah, and that also implies psychological safety, right? Like you feel safe to say, I don't know, but I will find out later. And then you
Right.
actually find out and you circle back and let the folks know that this is closing the loop. This is what I found out.
Right. Okay. When I'm working with teams, and we're talking about culture, I will often phrase a scenario to say, if you're at coffee with your best friend, someone that you trust, and they say, "What's it like working at your company? What is that culture like? What would you share?" Right? And it's interesting what kind of comes up from that, and that's where I have gotten the phrase like, "Yeah, I feel like we have each other's back." Right?
Mhm.
That there's some expression that there is psychological safety here, that there's a commitment to help each other be successful together. And then sometimes there's some negative things that come up as well, right? When we're facing those particular challenges in organizations, like at Meta, there was this shift in really becoming more professional in some sense with products. When there's a reorganization going on, which happens frequently, it seems like there's the annual reorganization in some organizations I think of. When there's layoffs going on, right, there's a lot of challenges for maintaining team morale and them feeling like their work matters and things are worthwhile here. How do you think about culture then and helping a team stay motivated and pushing forward in spite of those realities taking place in the environment?
Reorgs are so common in any large company. I have gone through, at Meta, I went through multiple reorgs, had many managers in different teams. I think my playbook is pretty simple. The first thing that I do is create clarity because I genuinely believe that people can deal with bad news, but they can't deal with ambiguity. So, being very clear about what's changed, what's not changed, and what's the expectation from them in the new environment. That really brings a lot of, I think, clarity for people and puts them at ease. And then just restoring agency for them. So ensuring them assuring them and ensuring that they are still the decision maker for their area. This is the area that they own. They can set the vision, the goals for their area. They decide the strategy and the execution plan. So I think that's always helped at least the people on my team. And the third thing that I've done is, as a team, committing to some small wins. So to just
Hmm.
like show momentum. So something that we can achieve within the next 6 to 8 weeks. So small time period, and sharing those goals. And when we achieve those goals, sharing the results and celebrating them.
Mhm.
So people feel like the org is or the team is making progress. We are achieving our goals, and there is momentum, and that always helps with the morale.
That's really good tips. Man, I appreciate how clear you were with those insights too. The recognition of being clear about the change, right? The reorg, the pivot, whatever's going on. What has changed, what has not changed, what's the expectation now for this new environment, and finding the small wins that we can work towards and celebrating those to kind of get that momentum back in place. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that with us. When I first learned about culture in grad school and then my PhD mentor, this was something that we talked about a fair bit too, that one way culture gets communicated and kind of reinforced are through rituals, right?
Mhm.
Things that you do as part of maybe team meetings, other recognitions, and like practices that are put in place. What kind of rituals do you think are important to have in place to build a good product team?
Yeah, I think the rituals are going to depend on the culture that you want to reinforce. And to your earlier point, every company has its own culture that's needed
Hmm.
to enable them succeed in the space that they are in and the strategy that they have set for themselves. Like I think some things that have been important for me to instill in my team have been, like, one is strategic thinking, and decision logs is a ritual that I have found as a great way to instill strategic thinking. And let me explain what this is. Like, so actually documenting what were the decisions that were made and why. And then, as part of that, when we are making a decision, we are always evaluating trade offs in product, and we are always deprioritizing things. So, what did we decide and why? But not just ending there, but also documenting and including what did we deprioritize and why, the rationale for that. So, so I think that's one. The second one for me is just learning reviews. So I am a lifelong learner, and I really think that we should be learning from everything that we ship, and every small experiment we ship, every product launch we are a part of. So what did we learn from what we shipped, what we launched, and what would we do different? So reflecting on that and having constant learning reviews for the team so the teams can sign up for these reviews and come and present. The pre-mortems, which helps encourage risk taking. And as I said, I think risk taking is very important for innovation, because otherwise you just like keep improving stuff and iterating on things that already exist without really thinking out of the box and thinking big picture. And the pre-mortems would be something like, before, like when we have a plan to execute on something, highlighting what the risks are
Hmm.
and what is the mitigation strategy. And if the mitigation strategy fails, then what is a plan B?
Right.
Because in socializing it. So when we socializing it all the way up to the leadership or the relevant stakeholder here, and it gives them the opportunity to intervene if they can. And if not, at least everyone's aware of the risks associated. So the PM doesn't feel like the product manager doesn't feel like they are going to be responsible if the things didn't go right, which then helps them be more comfortable with taking more risks, assuming that it benefits the user, of course.
Right.
And then finally, I think one key thing is recognizing and uploading the behaviors that you actually want the team to demonstrate. And I've seen this happen at many companies where the companies would say that they want a specific behavior or want to set a certain type of culture, but then when it comes to the performance evaluation, they evaluate on very different dimensions. So if you are actually encouraging risk taking, then recognizing that, or integrity. So, great integrity call, great cross functional leadership. So, recognizing the behaviors and not just the outcomes, which is that this team doubled their revenue. So, separating them.
Very good. Okay, so we got decision logs there, learning reviews, recognizing and reinforcing those behaviors. And just to double down on premortems, I love this tool. It was introduced to me along the way by an innovation colleague. And the two questions I love starting at the beginning of a project now are, let's imagine this project went successfully, what would have happened? Let's imagine this project was a failure, what went wrong?
I love that.
And the second question kind of adds to psychological safety because everyone's kind of concerned like this might not work out. Well, let's voice that, right? Let's get that out on the table and what we're thinking about. Those are really helpful. I appreciate you bringing up that premortem tool. Love the discussion, a lot of good clarity on culture, why it's important, kind of how to create it into a team and double down on the things that we really want to see as the operating system of the team. That's a good way to characterize culture here. We do appreciate an innovation quote around here. Before we get to that real quick, you and I got connected over a conference that PDMA has each year. That's the Product Development and Management Association. And I love going to their conference in 2026. It's going to be in October, I understand. You can find out at pdma.org. And they have a certification program for product innovators and managers called the New Product Development Professional. I make it easy for people to learn how to get all the information to be able to pass that certification exam. I went through this myself, which is the only reason I tell other people about it, because I found it so incredibly valuable to me to learn this body of knowledge. And the system I put in place is called the Rapid Product Mastery Experience, the RPM. You can do it as a group at work or individually. Find out more at productmasterynow.com/RPM. It has been a great tool for me to really further my career, and I've seen that in others as well. Nam, what is a innovation quote that you want to share with us? And tell us a little bit about what that means to you.
You already stole my innovation quote. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That was my quote.
Sorry about that, but it's a
No
great one.
worries.
Please tell us more.
Yeah. So I think first of all, I'm a big like it's one of my favorite quotes. I have many favorite quotes, and this is one of my favorite. And the reason I picked it today was because I think it's just like so apt for this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And like I have seen firsthand how the culture actually enables a strategy, and we spoke about this at length, but let me just illustrate this with an example. So even within Meta, Instagram and Facebook, which are two different apps that Meta has, both the apps have very different cultures. So if you work in the Facebook org, the culture is very data driven. And as a product manager, you're likely going to be creating very dense docs for reviews with a lot of data. So any hypothesis that you state needs to be very backed up by data. Versus if you work in Instagram, you are likely like the culture is more design driven. It's still data driven and probably more data driven than most companies, but also very design driven, because Instagram is a very aesthetic app, and that's its USP or value proposition. So you are going to be creating very aesthetic slides for reviews. So I think that just like I guess that just goes to show how the culture supports the strategy. Like Instagram is an aesthetic app. Facebook is like it has clutter, it's messy. But everything's backed by data. So I don't know if that explains what I guess or ties back to the quote, but I think of that as very interesting, or it was something I found very interesting during my time at Meta.
Yeah, I think it's a great example just of how you think about interacting with the team and present information, share information, being in those two kind of different cultures, right? Between
within the
the
company.
Facebook side and the Instagram in the same organization. Yeah.
Yeah, and
The
you
thing that
may.
I saw
Mhm.
in some organizations regarding that kind of this phrase to me, culture eats strategy for breakfast, was the ability for the organization to change or not change based on how willing the culture was to go along with that thing. Because it's easy, two organizations can have exactly the same strategy, but as you said early on when you're describing culture, it's about the execution. And one group, based on the culture, may be able to execute it much more quickly and make a change that's necessary, and the other one not. And I think that's kind of the secret sauce of culture is how able are you to embrace the activities you need to do for execution.
Yeah, and speed, and also the kind of decisions that you make.
Hmm.
Because the kind of decisions that you will make within the Facebook org are going to be different because you are evaluating them from a different lens
Hmm.
versus the kind of decisions that you make within the Instagram org are they like something cannot directly translate from Facebook to Instagram because they are more design driven and they evaluate it from a different lens. So, and those lenses actually tie back to
They sure
their
do.
strategy and and the way they work is
Yeah,
embedded
they
in their
reflect the
culture.
culture. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Nam, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate all the insights about building the right culture that you want for your product group, your product team. For anyone that wants to just find out more about you and your work, what's a good way to do that?
Yeah, I would love for people to follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I engage and post about my work. So I would say that's probably the best place.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that the link to your LinkedIn profile is in the show notes. I appreciate you spending time with us and helping us understand culture a little bit better.
Of course. No, thank you for having me.
And listeners, if you do want to find the written show notes of everything we just discussed, which includes some discussion questions for your group as well, we always add those to the show notes. There are some teams that listen to this podcast and occasionally will use it for a learning activity. And so there's discussion questions to get you started if you want. You'll find that resource at productmasterynow.com/578. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.